If you're a business owner, having access to data to be able to make decisions and to be able to take the right actions for the next level is extremely important. I was speaking with one of my clients this week, and he just secured funding, a grant for his business, and he was able to leverage the data that he's generating from LeadScore AI. Now, LeadscoreAI is one of my tools. It's one of the things that I preach about, that if a business is starting out, you should leverage on scorecards to be able to promote and scale your business. And this client was able to, utilize LeadscoreAI to do that. And he was telling me a story recently of how he was at an event. So he's in the credit space, credit and loan space, right? And he was at an event where a lot of his peers, right, were there, and they were all complaining about the same thing, the fact that within the credit space, they don't really have access to the right kind of data. It's not like there's no data within that industry. There's data there. It's just that that data is not so useful, for their operations. So right now, what they are able to get from CBN and other third parties is just negative credit reports, right? So the credit reports tell you who not to give loans to. They tell you, okay, this person defaulted, this person does not is not qualified, but they don't tell you who is qualified. They don't tell you who. We don't have the right credit systems like you have in developed nations, where the idea of having a credit facility gives you the ability to accumulate points, and those points ensure that you are someone who's capable to access more capital in the future. We don't have that. What we have is more or less like a negative view. Oh, this person defaulted here, don't give loan to this person. And for this set of business owners, it's not really useful, right? And so, but he was just smiling internally, and he was just laughing because he was like, for him, right, he doesn't have that problem because he has access to LeadScore AI. And with LeadScore AI, he's able to build out his own internal data, right? He knows who to loan to. He's able to create that internal structure for himself. And LeadScore AI has given him that capability. So he has data, and that data is really powerful. So I'm just going to be doing in today's video like a little deep dive into what LeadScore AI is really about and how it's impacting that industry. In later videos, we're going to shed more light on that particular client, and I'm going to have him come on either as a podcast or just have him, just talk about the impact of LeadScore AI in his business. And that, here's the overview. What we are really going to talk about is, first of all, how to generate data from a lead generation perspective, how that flows into your conversion data, and then being able to build a predictive algorithm to understand your future customers and where they are from. And I'll be sharing a bit about LeadScore AI and how that tool works. And this is going to be very useful, especially if you are in the credit facility loan space. It would be very useful for you because we already have a successful case study which you can leverage from and understand how that can impact your business. So let's get into it. It's going to be really interesting. All right, everyone. So let's see how this works. So everything begins with a scorecard, right? It all begins with a scorecard. The scorecard is the source of truth. The scorecard is the very first source of lead generation of data, and it's really what drives this whole engine in LeadsCore AI. Now we're still working with our the company that we created last week as a case study, which is Zoleski, and today we're working with Zoleski Cars. So let's just write that down there for context. So Zoleski Cars. So what Zoleski Cars does is that they're like a credit facility company that offers loans for people who want to own cars, and that's basically their ethos, right? So the idea is that we're going to create a scorecard for them, which we have, and that scorecard says find out if you qualify to own a car in three steps. So step one is to take a 10-second check. Step two is to get your score, and then we match you with a vehicle. So basics, three steps, and this is something that any company that is into credit facility can do. I always preach begin with a scorecard. The reason why is that the scorecard gives you internal data. right? And you will see how that works. So, we'll click check if we qualify. So first of all, you get the name of the person. So I'm just going to put my name. You get the phone number, all useful data. Just put in a dummy number there. And then here we go into data like, okay, which area do you live or work in? And this is useful for your own analytics. What's your main source of income? So are you salary? Are you a gig writer? How much do you earn? All of this is, of course, useful for your internal, data. Can you make an initial deposit? All of this. Do you have a guarantor? So how soon can you start driving? Within 2 weeks, immediately, and all of that. So there we go. You get your score, and then it takes you to the next step. So that's step 1, right? Build a scorecard. Now, what that scorecard would do is that it would help you generate leads. Now, a scorecard is different from a survey because with a scorecard, you're doing qualification of leads, and those leads are being qualified into segments. So you have segmentation also happening. So the leads are being qualified and they are being segmented at the same time. So let me show you a sample. So this is a sample of a LeadscoreAI dashboard. Now you can see that here we have total assessments. All of this is dummy data, right? So you have total assessments here. So, and then you can see that the assessments, the responses are broken into different categories. You have hot leads, you have warm leads, you have cold leads, and you have not qualified at all. And then you have converted, which we would come back to converted, very soon. So you can see the picture. First, you build a scorecard, right? And then that scorecard flows into a qualification step, which is done through the scorecard tool itself. And then the scorecard segments your leads into different categories. Now, the beautiful thing about this is that your sales team will log into this dashboard. They would see all the leads. All of this is dummy data. None of this is real, right? So they will see all these leads and they can easily filter the leads by hot, warm, cold, not qualified. And the idea is that they can click view and then see the information of this person. And then they can go ahead to call the person. They can go ahead to follow up with the person and all of that, right? So it's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. And so that is qualification and segmentation there. So you're generating that data. And so the next step, of course, like I've just shown you, is the dashboard. So your sales team would log into the dashboard. They would be able to see all this, and then they can now follow up on the leads that are qualified, non-qualified. All of this is basic standard stuff that you see in companies. I'm sure you're probably doing this today. You have a way of generating leads, you have a way of qualifying, segmenting them, and then you have a system of follow-up, standard procedure. Now this is where it gets interesting with LeadscoreAI. What we have done as a custom solution for companies, and we build this custom company by company, is that we have added an analytics feature into our process. So, and the analytics is built on the scorecard responses. And what this does is that it gives you an overview. So the analytics gives you an overview of, your dashboard, right? So let me just pull this. This is supposed to pull in here. Yeah, that's correct. Let's leave this for now. So if I click into the analytics section, you can see that I can see a bit of distribution happening. I can see the amount of responses per LGA, Shagamu, and then based on the responses that people made. So for example, this might be very important to me. Roughly how much do you earn monthly? I can see in terms of my responses, the distribution of people in terms of their earnings across different LGs, and I can mix and match, right? In terms of it will be a specific LG, I'm able to see how much they earn, I'm able to see how many people are driving, and then I'm able to see, let me just move my face a bit, sorry. I'm able to see, issues like, okay, how comfortable are you with weekly repayments, right? So if they say yes, no, all of this information is very valuable and important for me as a business owner. I'm able to see propensity to pay back. I'm able to see in terms of their earning capacity, and I'm able to mix and match this data and really, understand how this works. Now, this is useful for your current business and also for future businesses as well. So if you're thinking of launching something in the future, you already have this data. You can say, okay, you know what, I can focus on Shagamu, for example, because within Shagamu, I know that I'm seeing a lot of responses there of people who can pay, right? And that gives me insights into, in terms of data, what I can work with. So the analytics is really where LeadscoreAI, really shines, because is that we're really building an analytic tool based on your scorecard responses. It's very valuable to use, very custom to use, very custom to the questions that you're asking your respondents. Are you able to see this at scale? So we also come in to advise on the type of questions that would be useful for your internal data. Right? And all of this revolves around your specific KPIs. But it's really interesting and it's really powerful, because once you have this data, especially on this level of granularity, it gives you a lot of clarity and helps you to make better decisions in your business. So that is the third step, right? But then, from having this as an analytic tool, let me just move my face again. We have now taken it a step further, to the fifth step, which is the predictive analytics. Now, before we get here, so this is we need to first talk about a step before this. So let's just drag this down. Let's drag this down. This should yeah, this comes here and this comes here. Forgive my drawing. But before we come here, we need to talk about conversions, and I'm going to make this green. So this is conversions. So you have your conversion data. Now, conversion data is green because it represents money, right? So I think I should be able to space this out a bit so that we can see everything. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. All right, cool. So conversion data simply is the amount of people that have converted. So this might vary business by business. For a credit facility business like this, it might be people who are signing up and they've made the first payment, maybe an initial deposit or a commitment. And for other people, it might be people that bought your products or your services or paid for your invoice, right? So it's just the customers, anyone who has, paid you money for your goods and your services. So in this instance, conversion data can be tracked manually, and we're also working on an automated process within LeadscoreAI where we integrate with your payment system. So it's like a Paystack or a Monify or whichever platform that is. But of course, that varies on a customer per customer basis. But what we have that is standard right now across board is a manual way to track conversions. So for example, here, if Miriam Samuel Ibrahim has converted, you just have this, and you have this confirmation box to just tick that says yes, this person has converted. And what that means is that that person becomes part of your conversion data, as KPI tools and analytics that we are working with, right? And this is really powerful, because the idea behind LeadscoreAI is that what we're trying to really get to at the end of the day is that the scorecard says, the scorecard predicts for you, these are the people who are likely to be your best customers, these are the people who are likely to pay based on their responses. So it's based on what is coming out from their mouth, right? So the scorecard gives you that data to work with. But then when you now have conversions, when you have people that are making payments, you are now able to cross-check the people who made payments versus the scorecard data. And since everything is on the same platform, you are able to see a very powerful level of data that you don't really have access to on a normal day. So you are able to see what the scorecard says, and you're able to see what people say, and you're able to compare the two. And so that mixture is what gives birth into what we have here, which is the predictive insights. So predictive insights is the predictive analytics, that's the predictive algorithm. And what we're having there is that we're just able to compare, the conversion data versus the scorecard data. So you're able to see in terms of conversions, who converted, who didn't convert, in terms of what the responses that they asked, that they said, how many of them comfortably paid, the percentage of them. And you're able to see this based on the scorecard granularity. Like I said, this is custom to each company. So for some companies, it might be per LGA, local government area. For some companies, it might be specific to specific metrics or KPIs. But the idea is that you're able to see all this data and you are able to work, directly with that. So that is the beauty of, LeadscoreAI. And that is how I want you to be thinking about your company, right? Because at the end of the day, like they say, data is king. So you need to have a system through which you are generating data, have a system through which you are using that data to make better decisions, and using that data to predict your future and understand who to market to, who to focus on, which areas to focus on. And this is based on data you are generating. And, this is useful because you are not limiting yourself to third parties or third party APIs or anything like that. This is data that you are generating specifically within your business, and it helps you to scale and it helps you to grow. And so I think any investment really that helps you to do that within your company and really gives you that insight and those eyes is really powerful. And that is really what we are preaching with LeadscoreAI. We don't work with a lot of companies, we work with just a few, but the few that we work with, the impact that we are driving within their businesses is massive and is huge. So if you want to be a part of that exclusive group of companies that we work with, and if you believe this is useful for you, it might not be useful for everyone, right? But we've seen it have massive impacts within the credit facility space. We've seen it have massive impacts within the loan space as well. So if you are playing in those areas, or you think it's adjacent to what you're doing and it's useful for you, then we can have a conversation and you can just follow up on this video and maybe comment or like, and I would be sure to reach out to you. So thank you for going through this lengthy session. But yeah, that is the beauty of LeadscoreAI, and I believe I did a good job painting it. So I'll see you in the next video. Take care and have a good week. Bye-bye.